Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
And welcome to this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. I'm Eric Lopez. Jeff Sharon's out on vacation this week, but Brian Murphy is with me. Busy show here. Coming up, we're going to talk about the big news on UCF football that came out on Wednesday. Darriel Mack out indefinitely with an injury. We'll break that down and what it means for the team as training camp's just about 3 weeks away for UCF football. Plus, we'll also be joined by the Spectrum's Sports Despina Barton. We're going to talk a lot about Tacko Fall and Taco Mania, and as well as BJ Taylor, because she covered him since high school. So we'll talk about that and their prospects as far as perhaps playing in the NBA. We'll get to all that topics on this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Of course, you could follow all our content at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Lots of great content up there as we speak. All the latest news there. You can follow us on Twitter as well as UCF_Banneret. And, of course, you can listen to us on all your favorite devices for podcasts. Murph, how you doing?
Oh, business picked up, as they say in the business.
Yeah,
business has picked up.
You know, we took last week off. Some might think it's the July 4th weekend celebration, but really we took it off because it was your birthday week. So we figured Murphy's Law should be Murphy's Law is taken out. Apparently, Jeff don't want to extend his vacation to 2 weeks.
That is factually not true. Let's be honest. We took it off because it wasn't being talked about.
Well,
There's nothing to talk about last week.
Well, there is this week, my friend. Boy,
oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'm so sorry. Last week, I was like, there's something to talk about. So they came back at us and was like, yeah? You want something to talk about? Here's something to talk about.
And boy, are they ever. All right, let's get into it. It came out early Wednesday. UCF came out officially on a press release that Darriel Mack suffered a broken ankle from a non-football related activity this past week, and there is no specific timetable for his return. He's out indefinitely. Josh Heupel in a statement said, quote, quarterback Darriel Mack Jr. suffered a broken ankle from a non-football related activity this week. There's no specific timetable for the return. He will not be available for training camp. We hope Darriel has a speedy recovery, but we are excited about the talent we have in the quarterback room to start the season. That was Josh Heupel in the UCF in the press release, in the statement there. Brian, you've obviously been following this closely since it came out, and we kind of heard whispers of this even before it came out. And now it's official. Your reaction?
Yeah, it's too bad. Obviously, like my reaction is, it's just a tough setback for Darriel Mack, who really wants to make this starting job his own. And yes, he was going to have to compete with Brandon Wimbush and possibly some others for this job. But you consider that with his experience last year and against Memphis, and knowing the playbook as well as he does, and having that edge on top of Wimbush, as far as, being in the system and being in the program longer, he would have, the lead heading into fall camp. And so now that's all washed away. He will not participate at all in fall camp. You have to expect he's going to miss at least a couple of games to start the season. And so this is really a bummer just from his standpoint, because his prospects this season were looking fairly bright.
Yeah, it really was. But, you would think based on the experience of having played those games last year, winning the conference championship and the bowl game, he would have the upper hand going into this competition. And now he's out. And, I don't think you can rule him out as far as being back, eventually getting snaps when he's healthy. But it does open the opportunity here for Brandon Wimbush to get all the majority of the snaps here once they do start and report, and get accustomed to this team. Now, we'll get into the three quarterbacks on the roster there, but this is the big thing. A couple things here I take away from this is why UCF exactly got Brandon Wimbush, right, in the transfer, because of a situation like this possibly happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I wrote about it. I have an article on the site talking about Mack's injury, but I wrote about how, initially when Brandon Wimbush decided to come here over the early part or the late part of the winter, it was seen as a luxury. They got somebody to fill McKenzie's shoes, somebody who could give them depth in the room, who could, push Mack, an experienced signal caller. And now you need Brandon Wimbush. You really, really, really need him. And so this is sort of why you have depth. And this is actually why, even in the reality of not having McKenzie Milton or having Darriel Mack, at least for Mack, part of the season, you can still feel pretty confident with this offense because Wimbush has shown he can handle himself in big games with big programs and be productive. They're kind of the same player, Mack and Wimbush, and so you would assume that the playbook wouldn't change very much. So even with the injuries to the biggest, most important position in football happening happening twice to UCF, this offense still looks pretty good, and that's because they covered themselves by making sure they had enough depth at that position.
What did you think prior to this injury? I mean, I know it's, you want to wait till see what happens in camp and talking to people and things like that. But, we all have preconceived thoughts. I felt personally that regardless, I didn't think they were going to really go full in as far as naming a starter until the week of the FAMU game anyway to begin with. And I felt like even if they named a starter, I thought both Mack and Wimbush were going to play definitely in the FAMU game. In fact, would not be surprised if you would have seen three quarterbacks play in that game, if not all four. In the FAMU game, but I thought both would play in the first couple of games of the year going into, and then maybe we'll have a better feel for who's the guy going into the Stanford game. What was your thoughts going in prior to this injury?
Yeah, I think Mack had the lead just as being the incumbent, but I did not rule out possibility and probably the likelihood that we would see both of them, in the same game. Maybe I thought for some packages on the field at the same time, both of them together. Because they are such good athletes and can really change games with their legs. So even if they're not, even if it's not passing, they can take the ball and go. But yeah, I thought Mack had the sort of the incumbent lead, and really from there, I didn't know what would happen. I could certainly see that a bad camp from Mack and a good camp from Wimbush could give him the job. I never considered it truly more than a two-horse race. I mean, Dillon Gabriel is certainly involved, and if you want to talk about long-term, Dillon Gabriel might be the best quarterback of the four that UCF's got right now. But as far as the start of 2019, it was either going to be Mack or Wimbush. I would say Mack, would have been the choice. But now, obviously, there is no other choice but Wimbush. You're not going to see Dillon Gabriel or Quadra Jones, for that matter, line up week one.
No, but I do think they both play here, Murph, and this is now the equation. Keep in mind now with the new rule that was started last year, you could still play a kid, 3 games or 4 games, and still redshirt him. It's not like it used to be 4 games, thank you. It wasn't like before where if you played him a game, you would lose the opportunity to redshirt him. So it's conceivable that if you're UCF, you could still play Dillon Gabriel, let's say, pick out 4 games, and still redshirt him. So it gives you some flexibility that you may not have had a couple of years ago if this situation would have happened 2 years ago.
No, absolutely. I mean, you can look at even last year, like Quadra Jones took a red shirt last year, but most UCF fans will remember that he was on the field for one play last year. Yeah. It was in East Carolina, and he was part of the double pass touchdown to Adrian Killen. And he took a red shirt because he only played one game. So yeah, they could give Dillon Gabriel some experience. Certainly, that experience could come about in games against like a FAMU or maybe even FAU or other teams that just aren't as good later on in the season. They can give him some mop-up work and get his feet in the water, so to speak. So yeah, so Dillon Gabriel is going to play. I agree with that. I don't think unless something catastrophic happens to both Mack and Wimbush and they're both sidelined together, then in no way do I think that Gabriel will start. But we'll see. I mean, I will leave myself this bit of opening to say that Mack and Wimbush don't have issues as a passer is far off base, because they certainly do. And there's a reason why Wimbush lost his job at Notre Dame last year. He's a great athlete, but like Mack, he's really scattershot with his accuracy. And so if it gets into a rut where Wimbush is the only one of, if Mack's still hurt and Wimbush just is looking really, really bad as a passer in the system, and UCF, God forbid, loses a couple of games, back to back, then you could maybe hear some of the whispers, maybe people pining for Dillon Gabriel to get his shot. But I think that's kind of extreme. But yes, Gabriel will play, but again, it would take something unforeseen for him to be a starter.
Plus, and again, just because Mack's out right now doesn't mean, let's say, he could be healthy by, let's say, the Stanford game, and all of a sudden he may be inserted as the backup, and if Wimbush struggles, Mack could be back in that lineup too. Because I agree with you, because I know there's a lot of fans out there excited about Dillon Gabriel, and then about this talent, and some of this I think comes because of the comparison to McKenzie Milton. I would remind people that McKenzie Milton his freshman year was not good. And Scott Frost and that staff, their plan was to redshirt him. The only reason they didn't redshirt him is because they had no choice. Justin Holman injured his hamstring in the Michigan game back in 2016. And so you see Scott Frost's options were, I think it was Nick Patty, or just say, and I think he pretty much said, screw it, we're going to throw the freshman out there and let's just get him his reps now. But that was a different situation. At that time, he was taking over a team that had gone winless the year before, not a team that had gone undefeated in the regular season the last couple of years and is a contender for a conference title like this team is. So I agree with you. Wimbush has won a lot of big games too. So I don't expect Gabriel to start unless of an injury occurs to Wimbush and Mack at the same time, and they're both hurt at the same time.
I mean, and that makes the most sense. I think, let's talk about Quadri Jones for a second, because he is part of the group. Yeah. I think Quadri Jones here is the clear number 3 or 4 or wherever you want to put him. If Mack's hurt, you have 3 left. Jones is your clear 3. I don't really think he's in this race. He is, an athletic kid, but he is undersized. From all intents and purposes, it sounds like Gabriel is the best passer of this group. So there's no edge there that Quadri can really create in that facet. Let's just put that where it belongs, where, Quadri is the last man in this group, and we'll go from there.
I agree, although I am interested to see when the depth chart comes out how they list them, because just because Gabriel's ahead doesn't mean they might put hear me out here. Quadri Jones is the number 2, just because they might try to think about redshirting Gabriel, and then all of a sudden they could flip him, because Milton was a number 3 going into 2016, but then they flipped him from the number 3 to starting because their plan was to redshirt him. Now, obviously, the counter to that is with the redshirt rule changes, there's really no need to do that because you could play him in 4 games anyway. So I agree. I think Dillon Gabriel will be the number 2 at the end of the day, and Quadri at 3. But again, I'm not going to dismiss Mack completely. I mean, he should if he recovers from this injury, he'll be back healthy. And if you got to believe this coaching staff will play to Wimbush's strengths, and I think they know what they have in them. And let's be honest here, Murph, this team really gets going when it's running game. And I thought we saw that more with last year. When they run the football, that's when they're at their best. They're not a team that's going to be throwing the football 40, 50 times anyway.
No, absolutely not. I mean, and with these quarterbacks, they don't want to. Again, the accuracy is the issue here. So you want to be a run-first team, and they've got it's kind of a broken record, because I feel like we've been saying this for the last few years with the offenses that they've run out there, but they have a variety of guys who can do different things. Obviously, Adrian Killins is your big play speed back that you want to get into space. Greg McCray has really come forward as a 3-down back, which is kind of weird for a guy of his background and his size, but he did handle it at times last year. He was especially good in the second half. Otis Anderson is a utility guy, has really become a better receiver. And Batavius Thompson is still in the picture. So, yeah, they want to run a lot, and with these quarterbacks, those guys add a dimension too. So, the defense knows that's coming, But I think the defense knew that was coming when, Mack was facing them anyway. And at times it was still hard to stop because these guys are very talented.
How much of a drop-off, if you thought it was a drop-off, you think it is from Mack to Wimbush? Do you think it's a big minor adjustments, big adjustments? Like, how would you classify it?
Marginal. Yeah, very much so. I'm like, the injury here is bad in the scope of just Darriel Mack. It sucks for him. But for UCF as a whole, it's sort of like moving from Darriel Mack to a more experienced Darriel Mack. Brandon Wimbush is a little smaller. He's a little slighter, but he's still a pretty big kid at 220, 6'2". He's not a great passer. Neither is Mack. He's a really, really good runner in the open field. So is Darriel Mack. They kind of bring the same thing to the table. And so that's why I don't think, even though, Wimbush, relatively has not been in that room very long, it shouldn't take a long time for him to pick up on that playbook, because a lot of the playbook that Josh Heupel was going to design for Mack should fit in right with Brandon Wimbush's strengths. They do the same thing. So no, I don't think it harms anything. If anything, you have a guy who, because he's a senior, he just has more experience in those big situations, which is not a bad thing to have.
No, and I think that's big. And again, I know there's some Gabriel people are going to clamor for Gabriel. You just know that's how fans are. But again, I will remind people that Mackenzie Milton was not good in his freshman year. You could argue he single-handedly cost him the Maryland game with the turnovers. And that's what's going to happen when you have a freshman. It's nothing, and he turned out great. I think this team can win games just with getting with good quarterback play from Wimbush. He doesn't have to win the game for them. They have, as you mentioned, they're still going to be favorites. I would say, what, Murph? You think they're still favored in like 9-10 games with Wimbush, probably? Yeah,
they're favored, except for probably the game. Maybe definitely not. At Cincinnati, I don't know they'll be favored. Do you think they'll be favored at Temple or at Pittsburgh or both of those games?
I think it depends how Pittsburgh starts. I think the UCF will be favored. The Stanford game's interesting. It depends on how Stanford comes in. Stanford opens the season with Northwestern at home, and then they're at USC. So if Stanford's 2-0, they're going to be ranked pretty high. So Stanford might be the pick. But again, Stanford could also be 0-2, and then at that point, UCF's the favorite. So I think UCF will be, if I had to bet, I think UCF's favored in all the home games. I think Pittsburgh maybe is a toss-up. I think Cincinnati, we're going to know about them early because they open at home with UCLA, and they're at Ohio State. So that could tell the story, and it depends on what UCF's record is. But I still think UCF will be favored, actually. I'm looking at the schedule. FAMU at FAU. I think they're going to be huge favorites in those games. FAU has quarterback issues still, and they have to replace Singletary at the running back position. So I don't even think the quarterback's a factor in those two games. I think Stanford obviously is a factor, but I don't think the quarterback's going to decide the game in the Stanford game. The line of scrimmage is going to decide that game, and I would argue it's the same in Pittsburgh. UConn's terrible. You're right. I think Cincinnati's a threat. East Carolina's terrible. At Temple, I don't know. I mean, they have a new coach. I think Houston's the one game that scares me, Murph, and they might be this could be the big benefactor of this, because I think Houston, and this is, this will segue because we got media days next week for the American Conference in Rhode Island. You're going to be up there. And to me, there's obvious questions, the conference realignment situation and all that stuff. But I think as far as on the field this year, my biggest question is the health of D'Eriq King, the quarterback in Houston. Because I think if he's healthy, he is clearly the best quarterback in this league, and that could be the big difference. And maybe perhaps Houston being one of the favorites now to win the conference, because perhaps that's a big gap that UCF may or may not be able to come out of, depending on how you believe Wimbush will play.
Right, and we've seen Houston have better defenses than they probably have this year. They will not have a great defense, but in this league, where it's sort of like Big 12 South East, defense has been in times optional. So it's really, can you score more? And D'Eriq King, I don't know, how do you describe, he was a one-man show last year before the injury. He's absolutely the best quarterback in this league if he stays healthy. And we've seen UCF, certainly players go and different players come in, but we've seen UCF really struggle with mobile dual threat quarterbacks over the years. This is a more than a 1 year thing. And he is a dynamo. So absolutely, that is something to watch. My only thing there, and this is just based on track record, like if UCF loses a game, it's really hard for me to see them losing at home right now. I believe that game's at home, and it's hard for me to see them right now losing a game at home. So I'm looking more toward games on the road where they could slip up. Certainly that Cincinnati game sticks out.
But they may have to beat Houston twice, in theory.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, it depends. I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves, obviously. We'll get plenty of time as we get closer to kickoff to break down the schedule. But, I mean, I think that's going to be interesting there because, Milton can erase a lot of maybe deficiencies. If a team, that I think that's the big takeaway. And this was going to be evident even if Mack was the quarterback. The room for error, like a game where UCF could turn the ball over 4 or 5 times, I don't think that exists this year. Am I wrong on that? Like, I felt like, and I know they did that against Memphis in the title game, but
I was just going to say that.
But Memphis, I mean, don't get me started on Mike on Memphis and Norvell. I don't think you could pull that off this year. As teams do more, work on Mack and stuff. I think Cincinnati will be their biggest threat in their division, and I think Houston's probably right up there. But I think Wimbush will protect the football. Is my point, and I think that's the big thing that he did a pretty good job at Notre Dame. His issue, what got him, as you mentioned, is passing game, and I think that's going to be the thing that's going to get obviously dissected a lot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and. You'd also, I mean, we're getting too deep in the weeds here, but you would also expect that, hopefully the front seven of that UCF defense, even with the new name, can be more of an impediment to opposing offenses, which it just wasn't on the ground last year for many, many stretches. So, again, we're getting way.
I love it. Yeah.
We're talking about December now. It's July 10th. Woo! Jesus Lord.
Let's do it, baby. Can't wait. All right. What's the biggest question what are a couple questions you're looking forward to here in a few minutes here? You're going to go up there. What's the couple things you're look forward to the most and the biggest questions you have going to the American Conference Media Days for the last time in Rhode Island?
Oh, thank God. Now, I will say it's beautiful. When I went there last year, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's like 70 degrees in like July. It's great. It's right there on the water. I want to mention one thing about Mack that I want to bring up in Rhode Island. I hope Heupel has more information on this injury because there's so many things that need to be answered before we can really get a good idea of when Darriel Mack can compete again. People can look and say like, well, broken ankles take, about 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to heal. Yeah, but that depends on a lot of factors. And so he has a broken ankle. That is very vague. Is the ankle a clean break? Is it a displaced fracture? Where on the bone is it broken? And so because he's a running quarterback also, you have to deal with the lingering effects of that as a big part of your game. And how long does it take him to get full range of motion back? And how long does it take him to get the pain to subside so he can be the full athlete that we know he can be? Is there any other damage from the break that was sustained inside internally that we don't know about? And so I hope he's forthcoming with that information. Coaches usually are very close to the vet, so I will see. But I really want to know more about this injury and the status more than just broken ankle because that really doesn't tell us a whole lot. I think getting off of Mack.
Well, I'll add to that. Which ankle is it?
Right, the right or left ankle. We don't even know that. We don't even know that.
No, and that's significant because, you got to plant on one of them. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different mechanics that run with this. Unfortunately for you, by the way, I don't think you're going to get your answers because college in particular, they tend to be very much more conservative and secretive as far as what the exact injury is for a lot of reasons I don't want to get into. It's not like it is in the pros where they kind of be more open to it.
But you can at least ask like, does he need to have surgery?
Right.
Then if you say no, then it's probably not. It's not a displaced fracture. And again, we'll see. But it is dangerous to put timetables up there. Yes, most broken ankles take 6 to 8 weeks. That is just a ballpark figure. Everybody heals differently. Depends on so many factors we don't know about. So will he play this season? Yeah, unless there's something we don't know right now. But again, so it's so big. I think getting off of that, Richie Grant is going to be up there. So the 3 UCF players will be up there. It'll be 3. It'll be Richie Grant, wide receiver Gabe Davis, and center Jordan Johnson. So two offensive guys and one defensive guy. But I think Richie Grant is the most captivating of the three. He is just first of all, he's a great talker. So he's a great interview, period. So I don't care what my question is. I know Richie's going to give me a good answer. But Richie also, let's be honest, Richie Grant is coming into this season with major expectations, a lot of draft buzz, a top 100 player in all of college football, arguably. So I just want to talk to him about, coming into the season with this kind of spotlight on him. He had this last year. He was a midseason All-American on some teams, some midseason teams. So I just want to see what he can do this year and what he's thinking about going into this season with sort of the profile of Richie Grant being heightened a little further.
I think that's a very valid point, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that'll be fun there up in beautiful Rhode Island. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about will they expand to 12 and all that stuff. And
yeah, what do you want me to ask? We're here. Let me know. What should I ask?
Well, I think I don't think you're gonna have to worry about asking that one. I'm sure people are gonna ask that. My personal opinion, I don't think they will. I think it's gonna be 11. Unless a BYU becomes available option as a 12th football member and ESPN kind of endorses that. I really would. I don't sense that. I know we got all excited the first 24, 48 hours. Hey, let's throw this team in. What about this team? I really don't think they're going to expand anytime soon. I don't. But maybe I'll be wrong. I will be wrong. I mean, that's going to be good. I'm looking forward to you talking to Dana Holgorsen, the new Houston head coach. I mean, that'll be a little different. Mike Norvell, can you ask him about why he didn't give the ball to Darrell Henderson there in the goal line? Have you thought about that? No?
In both games, I know he kind of hurt his hand in the second half of the championship game, but he was still out there. So
I am curious. I'm curious, and we'll get into this more next week when you're there. I am curious why people still like Memphis, considering they did lose Pollard and Henderson. I'm kind of curious who the playmakers are. I know they got talent coming back, but I'm a little surprised how much love Memphis still getting. We'll see. So I will say this. So we can talk about this. I should probably write about this a little bit. It's just for content. Content. But I turned in my preseason. Everybody loves preseason rankings because they're so meaningful. I turned in my preseason AAC ballot, and I did have Memphis as the one out of the West. Only because Brady White coming back is pretty nice. It's pretty good, and I understand that I said defense is optional, but they do have a pretty solid defense. A lot of returning starters. I'm blanking on a couple of the guys they have coming back. Oh, the other running back, Patrick Taylor, I believe, is coming back. So they do have offensive. They do have some offensive versatility and danger, and they do have a pretty solid defense. They're a pretty well put together team. There's no I don't think there's any glaring flaw that you could say this is going to really put them below Houston or a team like that. So by the way, UCF is first in the East. I mean, yeah, we talk about UCF deficiencies on defense, but until somebody beats them, I don't know how you could put anybody else above them. Yeah. Cincinnati's going to be good, but it's UCF in the East. I have Memphis in the West over Houston. I have Cincinnati second in the East beneath UCF. I feel like you just wanted to bring that up to just show off the fact you have a ballot officially for the American Conference.
That's
what you really. That wasn't what you did. That was sneaky.
You got me.
You're gonna just put that ballot up on your article. That's really what it's gonna be. It's just here's my ballot.
I'm so important. I'm so important.
Yes, you are, and that's why we're gonna let you roll. Get ready. I know you got to get ready for Rhode Island. And lovely trips there. We'll recap Media Day next week and much more, obviously, on Black and Gold Banneret. Brian, Murph, tell the audience where they can find you.
Oh, I'm on Twitter too much, but I am on Twitter at @spokes_Murphy. And so I'll be tweeting out a bunch of stuff once we get there. Once we get there next week in Rhode Island, I will be there Tuesday. Remember last year on Tuesday they had the Mackenzie Milton Hawaiian Lei Heisman campaign.
Oh, it's true. Yeah.
And so, and a lot of schools do have their own little niche thing they put out there for the media. Does UCF have anything in their pockets to give away to the media this year? I am wondering. I'm kind of curious. I should also note too that I do have about 30 of the Mackenzie Milton Black Hawaiian Leis still in my apartment. That if anybody wants some, again, hit me up at @Murphy. I've given them away to all my family and friends. I still have a ton. And so anyway, they're here, and they're still really good. They're still really nice.
Wow. I mean, you're just promoting ballads. You're promoting stuff. You're just a business there. One quick thought before I do let you go. Tacko Mania. Your thoughts on Tacko Mania taking over the Summer League? I think he's got – I don't know what's going to happen with him, whether he's in the NBA overseas, but I do think this. He's definitely going to be playing in the Summer League, I feel, for a few years just because of his popularity alone. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. I mean, where does he fit in the NBA? I don't know. I mean, his breed is a dying breed. People of his ilk are going extinct in the NBA. But if you want to look off the court, like, does he sell? Does he get you merch sales? Does he give you eyeballs? Like, does he give you the things to talk about and draw ratings? Like, I believe in some aspects, certainly more than almost every other G leaguer. Yes. So in that way, he does carry capital. He is important. He may not be critical for a basketball standpoint as far as winning a championship for the Boston Celtics, but he's important to have because people want to talk about him and see him and be around him. So I think it's been great. I think Tacko cherishes it. I really can't wait to talk to him at some point. Boy, I hope that happens. I'm trying. God knows I'm trying at this second. But it's been fun to watch. And I should mention, he has looked pretty good. He's had some struggles with getting up and down the floor at times because, man, the G League can be like and one basketball at times. It can be like completely disorienting, up and down. It looks ugly. And so Tacko has a hard time keeping up. But when he gets set, he moves his feet pretty well once he gets positioned, both offensively and defensively. He's really showing more mobility than I think a lot of people expected. So he's got a future in the NBA, maybe it's the G League, but because he's Tacko Fall and people want to see him, that makes him a commodity.
It might make him overseas, too, where he can make good money. He's going to get paid. He's going to make money wherever he goes. Money. Let's not feel sorry for him. He's going to make money. And this just in, apparently he's tall, which,
Oh, my God, guys. Oh, nobody knew this apparently before ESPN talked to him last night. But Tacko Fall is gigantic. Who knew? Who knew?
Who knew? God, we'll get into more of Tacko talk with Despina Barton of Spectrum 360 next. Murph, you're very tall yourself, sir. Have a good time. We'll talk to you next week from Rhode Island.
I'm 5'9", but I appreciate the sentiment.
All right, coming up next on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, Despina Barton of Spectrum Sports joins us to talk Tacko and BJ here on the Black and Gold Banneret.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret. Eric Lopez here with you. And joining us now from Spectrum Sports, he's covered UCF as well as the high school scene as well as anybody. Covers the Magic, you name it. You've seen her on television. She's covered it all, ladies and gentlemen. My good friend Despina Barton joins us now here, making her Black and Gold Banneret debut. How you doing?
Hey, Elo. How's it going? It feels great to be with you. I'm sad that it took this long for my debut, but I appreciate the invite.
Well, blame Jeff for that. He doesn't like guests. I do. But that's my radio background, right? But, yeah, it's good to have you. And it's good to have you because you have a great perspective because, obviously, the Summer League's going on in the NBA. You and I are NBA junkies. For a long time. I mean, I think when you and I met, we were like talking NBA. I think it was the first, really before even UCF. We were both at UCF at the time, and we were talking NBA. We both were literally getting NBA gigs while we were at school. So we follow this daily, and what's fascinating now, we got two guys in particular with BJ Taylor and Tacko Fall. In Summer League, B.J. Taylor, the headliner with the Magic, and then you got Tacko Fall with the Celtics. He's become the story of Summer League. But you, probably one of maybe a few people, know them as well as anybody because you've covered them since high school. Just discuss your history with the two of them in particular because you've covered them going back to the high school days, before even UCF.
Well, now you're aging me a little bit, Eric. But yeah, I started in the market about 9 years ago and got to see a lot of these guys get their starts back in high school. I mean, BJ Taylor was a sophomore on JV and then got pulled up, and his junior year was his breakout year. I remember him just turning it on that season before he stepped out his junior year. He lost a lot of weight. He really focused on his game, and it's paid out dividends since then, because I remember covering him at the Winter Park Rotary Tip-Off Classic, which is a historic winter tournament here in Orlando in the metro area. Winter Park High School hosts it, and he just went off for like 52 points. He became like the tournament MVP. He matched the numbers, and I think he even beat Austin Rivers' performance as far as scoring goes in that tournament. And it was like his coming out party, and after that, every game was kind of to that level. He was fun to watch. He was a facilitator. He had this confidence about him, and you knew that you could count on him. And that was really fun to cover back in high school. And then I got to catch up with him, obviously cover him through UCF a little bit less. There's a little bit more barriers up in the college ranks. But, when you see each other, it's always a warm hello. How you doing? What's going on? And when he finished out this season, I got to go back with him to Boone High School as he started to prepare and do his pre-draft workouts and just really get his mind right and sit down with him and kind of just get to know each other as adults and what he really wanted to accomplish here. And yeah, we haven't seen him play for the Orlando Magic in the Summer League yet, but I reached out to his camp, and they say that he's just focused on doing his best when he gets that opportunity. And BJ, he's never a guy that's going to hang his head low. He told me a couple months ago when we did have that meeting, like, listen, all I need is a chance. I'm pretty, down to earth here. I know I'm not going to get drafted, but I need someone to give me that opportunity, and then they will not be disappointed. So I trust that BJ will get his opportunity, whether it's here in Summer League and someone scouts him, he goes G League or overseas. BJ, I think, has a path to be a professional basketball player. Tacko, oh my goodness, can we not stop? I can't even say his name without smiling, Elo. He was a joy to cover at Liberty Christian when he came in. I remember he was one of my first interviews as a newly multimedia journalist. For those who are, listening at home, that means you're one-man banding it, your camera, your mic, you're setting up your lights. And
that's a heck of an assignment to get there. Not that.
I mean, he was just a sophomore, I believe a junior at Liberty Christian. And I was trying to get the story of how he landed here from Senegal and all the hoops he had to jump through and to find the perfect host family. And no joke, Eric, I'll tell you this. The first interview, I didn't roll the audio correctly, and I had to go back and sit him down again. And I was so embarrassed. He probably doesn't remember this, but he was such a good sport about it. And he's just had this energy about him. It's just infectious. And so when you see him at first, obviously he's the 7'7" basketball, superstar. But he's not. He's a gentler soul, and he's just a remarkable man. We just saw him take the AAC All Academic Honors. And for me, like watching him come over, freshly from Senegal at that point, I was just impressed with him through and through. And I remember covering his signing day when he signed to go to UCF. And I was like, hey, Tacko, let's go outside. Can I take a photo with you? And much like everybody else that sees him, you want that photo, you want that keepsake. He's like, yeah, just, what do you want me to do? I'm like, I don't know. Well, we'll do whatever. And so it ended up being like kind of a selfie. And I have my mic flag. It's for, at the time, Bright House Sports Network. And he's standing behind me. It looks like two of me, And he's just been a lovely athlete to cover. And he does make our job, so much more fun. And I know the fans feel it too with all those chants inside summer, out in Vegas for Tacko Fall. He is an entity. And I think the Celtics are going to find a great way to use him.
Well, and he's played well. He's definitely the most popular guy in Summer League, especially once Zion Williamson was announced. He was out for the rest of the Summer League after that first game and that buzz. All the attention has been on Tacko Fall, and every time he's on the court, Pete crowd is cheering. He's talked about how he really appreciates that. But What do you make of all the hoopla? Because you've seen him for a long time, and obviously all of us that's covered UCF and gone to UCF games, they see him on a regular basis. But it's interesting to me, going back to the NCAA tournament, when Jim Nance and Bill Rafter and Grant Hill, they were like gaga over him, right? If you listen to the broadcast, it was like, oh, it's Tacko. They couldn't get enough of him. And it's kind of been the same way over the summer league with all these NBA guys. Like, whoa, look at this Tacko Fall. They kind of like don't know what to do with him. What's your impression of how people kind of react to him? Kind of like wow, look at this unbelievable guy. They're just fascinated with him.
Well, I think they're kind of late to the party, right? We saw this at UCF, and each year he would develop his skill set, get a little bit smoother, a little bit more confident, a little bit better cardio. Now we're starting to see the complete package, and everybody else is like, this is something we've seen for years. I think what stood out most about his summer league play, of course he's tall, of course he's going to grab those rebounds and slam it back, but his finesse with his moves towards the basket have been so smooth and buttery. And it's nice to see it all come to fruition, because he did start playing the game late, and he's 23 years old, right? That's old to be going into NBA Summer League when you're playing against 18, 19-year-olds that are one and done. So I think his ceiling is so much higher than what people are expecting, So he's blowing people away, of course, because they had no expectations. Now, I talked to analysts before back in February, like where they thought Tacko Fall was going to go in the draft. I had people tell me he's a first rounder. So obviously no one bid at that. But he's got the potential to be one of the best snags in this year's, class. Well,
I think if this was 2008, I think he would have been a first-round pick. I think the problem is, and you know this, you and I have been at the NBA, we covered it, how the game's changed the last few years. It's more small ball now than ever before, where you got a guy like Nikola Vucevic, the star center for the Magic. He's out in the perimeter shooting three-point shots, which was you would never have thought that like 10 years ago. Look at Dwight Howard, who was the face of the Magic franchise. He's kind of been obsolete from the league because his game is outdated, right? Because he has no perimeter game. So I think that's my concern with Tacko there, Despina, is, can that really blend into this age of the NBA? Can he blend in with that and be athletic and be able to guard these skilled big guys out in the perimeter? That's my concern.
Well, and it's very valid. The summer league coach for Boston, Scott Morrison, said worst case scenario, we could use him as a specialty player, right? Situationally, he comes in primarily probably defensively to have that presence. Or he says, best case scenario, he could be a regular role player. I think they're going to try and figure out how to plug him in. I think having a man in the league that is 7'7" and can defend the way he is very critical. Nobody else has that. Like, that's going to be something that sets the Celtics aside, and something teams are going to have to plan for if he does make that 15-man roster. So right now he signed to that Exhibit 10 deal where he could, if he signs with the team's G League, there's some money involved there, incentive to keep him within the franchise. But if he does end up signing, getting a position with the Celtics, that's a $580,000 paycheck, and that's the minimum.
All right, we're speaking with Despina Barton here with Spectrum Sports here on Black and Gold Banneret, and I think that's going to be interesting with Tacko. I could see him being a two-way player contract. I think where you have the flexibility to kind of put him into the G League and then maybe call him up if you have to. I feel like that's where Tacko's future is headed. And, the Celtics is not a bad situation because they lost some bigs during the offseason. Al Horford obviously went to the Philadelphia 76ers. They traded Baines over. They did sign Enes Kanter, but he's not a defensive center. So they probably are searching for bigs right now. And Tacko, I think, as you mentioned, he hasn't played a lot of basketball, but he's got some upside. He is tall, and as they say in basketball, you can't teach height. I could see a two-way contract in his future, don't you?
Yeah, he's already impressing, everybody at Summer League. He had 12 points in 11 minutes against Cleveland, then 6 in 10 minutes on Saturday against Philly, 4 rebounds. He's just a force in the paint, and I think they will find a way to utilize him like you're talking about, Elo. He will have a spot.
All right, you mentioned B.J. Taylor earlier. He didn't expect, obviously, to be drafted. He's with the Magic. You cover the Magic regularly. the point guard position has been a hot topic with the Magic now for the last couple of years. What's going to do there? They obviously acquired Markelle Fultz last season. It's kind of a low risk, trying to see what they can get out of the former number 1 pick. We don't know when he's ever going to play. It's always a great mystery with him.
We don't know anything, Eric.
No. It's a great mystery. Good luck if you get info on him. But they have DJ Augustine. Looks like they're going to bring back Michael Carter-Williams. So, in your opinion, knowing both sides very well, do you think there's any chance BJ can somehow be on this Magic roster, or maybe even on the Lakeland Magic, which is the G League team that the Orlando Magic run and is in Lakeland? Is that a possibility at all with BJ?
I don't think there's a possibility for him to make the 15-man Orlando Magic roster. I think DJ Augustine is going to be your veteran go-to guy. Michael Carter-Williams has proven himself in that one-year deal. It looks like he'll sign another 1 year shortly. Jeff Weltman is still figuring out, in Carter-Williams' camp, are still talking things through. I don't think BJ competes at that level yet. Who's to say, though? Lakeland could be a good spot for him. I mean, we saw a lot of guys in the way Magic like to pull guys up and down, and you don't know what's going to happen during the season with injuries. Like, that may be the best option, right? You're playing close to home in Lakeland. You're still training at a high level with other guys that want to make it to that team. I think he needs a shot. And obviously, if the Magic aren't going to give him one on their A squad, and nobody else too. I mean, there's going to be so many options for him, I think, if he gets some playing time on the court. And then you know how these agents work. You're going from one summer league to another workout to another training session, and then you're showcasing here. The point is to get him paid and get him in a pro organization. So I think he'll then have to make the best decision that's for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think Lakeland would be interesting just from a business standpoint. I think all parties would kind of benefit there. A local kid playing in Lakeland good PR for everybody. But the question, I've told people this, and I think you would agree with this. I think the thing that BJ's got to go in against him, as far as the NBA is concerned, is first of all, it's his height, but he's not a great defender compared to a Fred VanVleet, for example, who was undrafted out of Wichita State and helped the Toronto Raptors to the NBA title recently. He's not a great defender, and I think people still – is he a consistent enough shooter? What's your thoughts on that? Is that a fair kind of concerns, red flags about BJ?
I think they're fair. I mean, we've seen, quote-unquote, like lazy moments on defense from BJ. But he also had to battle injuries year after year, and I think there was some hesitation on that front. I think getting out of that college realm and having the season they had, he just has a lot of room to grow and to show that he can adapt and be a value to somebody. It's rough. It's rough. You're trying to make a 15-man roster of only 30 professional teams in the country. There's just so much talent. I don't know if he can find that role.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. He's going to have to prove himself, and I agree with it. And I've told people this too. We've talked about it in the podcast, and I mentioned this with Aubrey Dawkins because I feel like Aubrey has the best shot of the three to have significant minutes in the NBA. You agree with that? But it may not be necessarily with the Pelicans because the Pelicans are stacked with young players. So he may not make it there, but he could get that. Could open the doors to other teams down the road. Is that how you kind of feel for all these three guys? I think Tacko maybe has the best shot of sticking with the current team because of what we talked about with the Celtics' big situation. But I think Aubrey of the three has the most to kind of give. He has the best talent. He's the most talented guy of the three. The question with him is that jump shot, and it's been interesting. I've watched him in summer league. He's been a spot-up shooter. Can he hit the three-point shot consistently? That's going to be one of the bigger questions. But I think he's athletic enough to guard and defend. But I don't think it's going to be on the Pelicans. He's probably going to have to open some eyes for other teams.
How fun would it be, though, if he did stick with the Pelicans? Yeah, Aubrey Dawkins, a week ago, no joke, Elo, was downtown Orlando putting up shots at the 24-Hour Fitness. I know this because my husband was gawking at him as he hit every single shot he took. And he proceeded, Matt, to call me and let me know Dawkins is a beast. And he has that shot factor. He told us when he came to work out with the Magic, people ask him, is there such thing as ageism going on here? Because he's 24 years old, right?
Yep.
So he's older, he's more mature. Teams aren't willing to risk as much on someone that maybe has already developed all their habits or reached their ceiling or cannot fit into a certain system. And I do think this is ageism. I think this is starting the age where we start to see players come out of their shell finally and become more productive on the court. They know who they are, what their skill set is, and how they can be most beneficial. And I think Dawkins, it was a quiet 8 points, 4 rebounds against the Knicks. And unfortunately, the broadcasters were talking over a lot of his shots he made. But, man, they were beautiful. And he impressed – I think he definitely impressed me, just being able to hold his own, with so many big names on the court next to you. I think he's a very poised man, and I think he has the best shot of being on one of those 30 teams when this summer concludes.
And get minutes. I think he'll get minutes. And you're right, age is a big part of this. If he was 19 or 20, he would have been drafted. But the fact he's 23 or 24, the league kind of looks at it, well, he's peaked. They love the upside, right? Like the Magic drafting Mo Bamba, it's upside. Now, he's nowhere near a finished product. He's a project. They've said that from the beginning, but they like the potential. So the potential seems to win out in the first round at the expense of guys that have been in college for a long time, like an Aubrey Dawkins, and that's why you see, I think, more and more guys have success coming out of the second round or even undrafted in the NBA because those guys are more polished and you know what you're going to get, like a Malcolm Brogdon, who won the Rookie of the Year, was a second-round pick. Draymond Green was a second-round pick, and you've seen what he's turned out to be. There's other examples of that. The Raptors actually are filled. They don't even have a lottery pick on their roster that won the NBA title, but yet – but as you know, having covered the Magic drafts, they love the upside with wingspans and all that stuff. And so as a result, unfortunately, that goes up against Aubrey Dawkins. Plus, he did have an injury history with his shoulder.
Yeah, no, that's no doubt. We know how the system works. But I think what we're starting to see, much to what you're saying here with these older guys or the guys that are spending more time in college or have to battle back from injuries, there's a level of maturity that comes along with that. Think about the 18-year-old self of you, Elo, and the 24-year-old self. I can tell you personally, I've made lots of mistakes that I will never make again during that time period. But these guys, 18, 19-year-olds, are going into the league with mass amounts of dollars, even larger groups of groupies hanging around, and you're forced to make big decisions that will affect you for probably the rest of your life if you make the wrong one. So, I've always gravitated to the older guys. I like Nikola Vucevic. I love, Terrence Ross, our group of guys that Jeff Weltman decided that he believes in and wants to build the Magic with. I think he's on the right track, and those are older guys.
Yeah. We're speaking with Despina Barton of Spectrum Sports. You can see her most weeknights on News 13 on Spectrum Cable Systems. There on News 13 on Spectrum 360. Does a lot, covers the Magic, covers UCF here on Black and Gold Banneret. But what's the legacy for BJ and Tacko? Yeah, we'll throw Aubrey in there, and I don't mean to ignore Chad Brown. He's also on the Magic team, but he's not going to make it either. He's going to have to get other opportunities after this. But what's the legacy of this team that got to the NCAA tournament, was within a tip-in away from beating Duke in the second round and leading UCF for the first time in the NCAA tournament since 2005. Think about that. You and I were in school, and they hadn't been to the tournament since 2005. Heck, you weren't even in UCF yet, right? Where were you in 2005? You were in high school? I'm going to outdate you again.
I know. I was a sophomore in high school.
Oh.
I think at Gulf High School in Newport Richie. If anybody's listening, I made it out.
You made it out. But what's going to be the legacy for this team as Johnny Dawkins is going into a transition year with a lot of new faces and transfers? But what a legacy, though, with that group with BJ and Tacko leading UCF back to the tournament. Yeah.
To me, this is the best team that UCF has put out. I remember the days when Mike O'Donnell, Jermaine Taylor were playing big. Josh Peppers, who I just connected with, I think he was class of 2007, who was competing in the TBT tournament. Got a story coming out about him this week. This is definitely the most talented. They were the most exciting group. You want to see these players move on and keep, those UCF ties into the league. There aren't a lot of them. And just like football, it's going to take time. I think Tacko Fall with the Celtics, could be magical for not only UCF but for the NBA, and to embrace him, all 7'7" of him, and they already saying he has a cult following. That's exactly what it was at UCF. I think they have to remember, they were built by UCF. That's just, remember your roots, guys. For BJ Taylor, I will always remember him in the orange jersey, blowing up the scoreboard for Boone High School. So these guys have a lot to be proud of. And most of them have their degrees, which is a good backbone. So if these pro careers diminish, and I know things get a little gray with Tacko and his visa over here, but regardless, this is the most talented group to come out of UCF. And for Johnny Dawkins, these aren't even guys besides his own son that he recruited. Donnie Jones deserves a lot of credit. He was an exceptional recruiter. I enjoyed covering Donnie Jones as the head coach for UCF. He just didn't have all the pieces in place, and it's going to be fun to watch him coach at Stetson just down the road in DeLand. So you got to give kudos to Donnie Jones for recognizing and recruiting, BJ Taylor, Tacko Fall, wanting them to turn the page. And UCF history books, like guys didn't want to stay in town and play for the hometown team 5-6 years ago. Now they do. Chad Brown too from Deltona. I think what they're doing more is showing that being a hometown kid is very valuable.
And do you think the success with BJ's had and Tacko and Chad at UCF, does that, you follow these high school players, you know what they're thinking. Does this now kind of create an opportunity for Johnny Dawkins? Is that going to help him get more local guys within the region to come to UCF where maybe in the past that was a problem?
I hope so. I mean, Nazir Little was here last year. Right down the road at OCP. So, and we know Nazir Little went to UNC and got drafted late in, I believe, the first round. There's talent here. I don't know how big his footprint is here because his roots were obviously in the Carolinas and then beyond. So you just got to want to get to know the community that you're representing. Same thing with, Josh Heupel over to football. Scott Frost loved being here. I mean, you would see him and his staff at every darn high school game I went to on Friday night. No joking. Heupel has connected with the coaches, but it takes time to build those relationships. Right. So I think only time will tell. And looking at the high school landscape this year, I don't think we have guys that, UCF would necessarily go for this next year, but certainly coming up in the future, there's a lot of guys you want to pluck and you want to keep them here.
The interesting thing, too, about basketball recruiting, it's tough. If you're little, if North Carolina wants you, it's hard to say no, right? I mean, that's one of the premier programs in college basketball. Vince Carter left to go to North Carolina. Other guys go to power programs like the Kentuckys of the world. Whereas in football, there's so much talent in the state, and you can speak to this having covered the high school football landscape. There's so much talent across the state where there's still enough talent where even if guys leave the state to go to big programs wherever, that there's plenty of talent for everybody. Whereas in basketball, it's a little more like the top-level talent usually leaves the state because they go to major programs, so you almost have to settle for the Tier 2 talent. Whereas football, there's so much talent that you could still steal some talent, Tier 1 guys, on the football standpoint, right?
Yeah, there's so much talent. There's so much to go around between us and Tampa Bay and Miami. These kids are the fastest, fiercest ball players at 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. It's rich soil here in these parts, Elo.
That's the Despina Barton there from Spectrum Sports. Check her out on Spectrum 360. Tell the audience where they can find your work there and, of course, Spectrum Sports.
Yeah, every night from 10:30 to 11, we have a sports show on Spectrum News 13. It's called Spectrum Sports 360. There's 4 of us. We have Pat Welter, John Alba, Luke Hetrick, and myself, and a few good producers. And we put on a great sportscast that has a lot of storytelling. And, of course, we're about to ramp everything up with football getting going, Gators, UCF, FSU. It's a fun show, so I hope you check it out.
All right, Despina, thanks for joining us. I'll see you right around when football starts there with UCF.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me, Elo.
That's Despina Barton, Spectrum Sports, back with more here on the Black and Gold Banneret. And welcome back here to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric Lopez, thanks to Despina Barton for joining us. A couple quick thoughts before we wrap up this show. Some interesting news UCF related. And let me just finish as we were talking about Tacko and BJ. Obviously, Tacko, a lot of fanfare at Summer League. It's been awesome to see. But I hope people just understand, judge him more as the basketball player. I thought there was in poor taste what one of the ESPN reporters did with the whole tall gimmick jokes and Tacko jokes. It was just poor taste. He's a good kid, and I'm happy that he's enjoying himself at the Celtics. Whether he makes the Celtics roster, G League, it remains to be seen. But we'll see what happens with him. But he's got a good future in the NBA, as I talk, in basketball in general. And I think he'll be back in Summer League regardless, just because, hey, he's people want to see him play. And I could see him being overseas as well. I think BJ, and as Despina brought up, I think for BJ, more than likely, it's going to either be G League or overseas for him. And I think I would say the same. I think Chad Brown's more than likely an overseas player as well. And I think Aubrey Dawkins, we'll see. I don't know if he can make the Pelicans, but time will tell on that as well. So hope for the best for those guys and see how it goes. By the way, if you check out Spectrum 360, and Despina actually did a feature on Josh Peppers, former UCF player. I know she's going to post that on social media in the coming days, so you might want to check that out. Also, some softball news. The U.S. Junior National Team played in the International Cup, a lot of big event. The U.S. National Team won that gold medal of that tournament that took place in Columbus, Georgia last weekend. The Junior National Team, which is basically players 19 and under, won the bronze medal there. And the reason I bring that up is because current UCF softball head coach Cindy Ball was on the staff as an assistant coach on that. So she got bronze medal for that. She's going to be a part of that staff this summer in August, the Junior National Team, which won the gold medal in Clearwater in the Junior World Championship. They're going to defend their gold medal in the Junior World Championships in Irvine, California in August, and Coach Ball will be a part of that. Tiffany Jordan, who's the assistant at UCF, is with the Junior Canadian National Team. They're currently at the Canada Cup, a big Canadian tournament event. A lot of international teams play there, as well as some all-star teams, including a college all-star team known as Triple Crown Colorado. And among the players, which has a bunch of players from colleges that are all-stars, and among them is UCF's very own Aaliyah White, who's on that team. So that's all going on right now at the Canada Cup. So some great exposure and some news headlines for UCF internationally right now in softball after we saw what the UCF soccer alums did at the Women's World Cup, seeing softball players involved at the Canada Cup and, of course, the Junior World Championships and the coaching staffs. And they will be that. So that's going to be a lot of fun there. That's going on right now at the Canada Cup. For more information on that, check out the In the Circle SB on Twitter. They have a podcast. Someone hosts that with this similar voice. So you could get all the details on that and much more. Some schedules out, folks. We're in fall mode. Fall sports coming out. And we'll get into this more as we get closer to these dates. And we'll discuss this more with Jeff and among them there. But women's soccer has their schedule out as well. Coach Sahadak and company schedule. They're going to start off the regular season at home against Wisconsin on Thursday, August 22nd. As a longtime follower of the program, I think back to when UCF was a national seed but had to travel up to Wisconsin, I think in 2009 in the NCAA tournament. So that kind of brings back memories. And then they'll host Ohio State Wednesday, August 28th. So Big Ten teams back-to-back at home to start out the women's soccer season. Other headlines, they go to George Mason on Sunday, September the 1st at Florida, Sunday, September 8th. They host Arizona State Thursday, September 12th. That was a return game from a couple years ago when UCF went up to Arizona State and beat them there. So that's a tough schedule again. Not a surprise for Coach Sahadak playing a tough schedule. They also are going to have a California trip at Long Beach State and at UC Irvine on Thursday, September 19th and Sunday, September 22nd, prior to conference play starting with Memphis, the defending conference champions, a showdown. Memphis and UCF Thursday, September 26th. The regular season will end hosting South Florida on Halloween, Thursday, October 31st. That's when UCF will host South Florida. Of course, the conference tournament will be hosted by the team that wins the regular season the following week. So that's the story there. And then something that we'll probably get into more when Jeff returns to the show in future episodes, the volleyball schedule out as well. Coach Todd Dagenet and company are going to start out the year on the road in Oxford, Mississippi on Friday, August 30th. They're going to play Iowa State, Rice, and Ole Miss, the host team. Their home opener is Friday, September 6th against South Carolina. They'll be hosting South Carolina, Albany, and Kansas up there at home. Other notable dates in the schedule. They'll also be hosting a rematch from the NCAA tournament. Opening round, UCF will host Florida Gulf Coast Friday, September 20th. They'll host Miami as well as FAU. Conference will begin on Friday, September the 27th against UConn. Make a note, this year, volleyball will have a conference tournament. It will begin on Friday, November 22nd, and UCF will be hosting that conference tournament. So, again, we'll have more details on this in future episodes when Jeff returns and we get closer to the seasons for volleyball and soccer starting. But that's some of the notes there in there. All right, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. For Brian Murphy, I'm Eric Lopez. Thanks to Despina Barton for joining us on this edition. Check us out at blackandgoldbanneret.com. A lot of content, more on this developing story. Obviously, with Darriel Mack out indefinitely with a broken ankle. We'll be following that story, obviously, closely. We're going to be covering the American Conference Media Days next week in New Hampshire. Brian Murphy will be up there. We'll recap all of that next week, as well as we get closer to the start of the football season and all the fall sports. Before you know it, it's right here. So lots going on. Make sure you follow the site. I'm continuing my top 25 countdown for the top 25 events, athletic events of UCF from the 2018-19 year. That's all going on the site. My number 18 was rowing, winning its 5th straight conference title. So we'll have that countdown all to help us get closer to the start of the fall season. So I hope you enjoy that. And obviously we have a lot of content on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. And, of course, like us on Facebook as well on there. So, for Brian Murphy and for the vacationing Jeff Sharon, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.